Imagine, in the autumn of 1552, a vast Ottoman army advanced north, tens of thousands of soldiers, siege guns, engineers, moving toward a single fortress in northern Hungary. The target was Eger, a hilltop stronghold guarding the mining routes that financed Habsburg resistance. Inside its walls stood fewer than 2,000 defenders. By every military measure, the outcome seemed decided, yet the fortress did not fall, not in a day, not in a week. The siege stretched in a test of endurance, artillery pounding stone, trenches creeping closer, ladders rising against battered walls. And within those walls, under the command of Istvan Dobo, defenders adapted, reinforcing breaches, rationing powder, deploying devices that turned the slope below into sudden fire. This is the story of how a small garrison held against an empire, and why the Siege of Eger became a symbol of resistance in a fractured Hungary. A generation earlier, Hungary had been broken at Mohács, its king dead, its army shattered, its territory divided between Ottoman rule, Habsburg authority, and a fragile eastern principality. By 1552, the frontier was no longer distant. It was a shifting wound across the land. Fortress after fortress had fallen, tightening the ring around the northern highlands. Eger stood along the road toward mining towns whose silver sustained resistance. If that road opened, the balance would tilt south. The Ottoman campaign of 1552 sought to dismantle that defensive belt. Movements were coordinated across multiple targets, combining artillery, infantry and engineers in a measured advance. Eger was not attacked in isolation. It formed part of a broader design to weaken Habsburg positions step by step. Yet unlike several strongholds that year, this fortress did not yield quickly. Inside the walls, Istvan Dobo faced arithmetic that offered little comfort. Roughly 2,000 defenders, soldiers, irregular fighters, townspeople, stood against a force many times larger, up to 17 times. Supplies were limited, powder was finite, reinforcements were uncertain. The only advantage lay in preparation. Dobo reorganised the garrison into rotating watches, assigned repair crews to vulnerable sections, and stockpiled stones, timber and water at likely breach points. Discipline became the first defence. When the Ottoman army reached the valley, its presence transformed the landscape. Artillery batteries were positioned on rising ground. Trenches began to cut into the soil. Supply lines extended behind the camp like arteries feeding a single purpose. The siege opened with deliberate fire, heavy bronze cannons striking the southern wall in controlled intervals. Stone cracked. Dust filled the air. The bombardment did not aim for spectacle, it aimed for fracture. Day after day, the pattern continued. Each impact widened existing damage. Engineers below advanced. Trenches closer, reducing the distance for infantry assault. Under shields and portable mantlets, units tested the slope, measuring response times from the battlements. This was pressure by calculation, not haste. The defenders answered with smaller guns and concentrated musket fire, conserving powder and targeting exposed crews rather than the mass of the army. Among the defenders was Gurgely-born Emissa, tasked not with command but with innovation. He experimented with improvised devices using powder, resin and combustible mixtures sealed in clay or wooden containers. These were not standardized weapons, they were adaptations shaped by necessity. As ladders approached the walls and infantry formations tightened, these devices were deployed down the slope, disrupting cohesion at critical moments. Surprise created hesitation, and hesitation bought time. The first major assault followed sustained bombardment. A section of wall weakened enough to invite direct attack. Infantry advanced under covering fire, scaling ladders rising against battered stone. Combat narrowed to arm's length, pikes thrusting downward, shields pressed tight, boiling water and stones used to dislodge climbers. Every defender counted. Casualties could not be replaced. The objective was not glory, it was endurance. As the siege lengthened, fatigue became as dangerous as artillery. Repairs were conducted at night while guns cooled. Mortar was packed into cracks that might reopen by morning. Food was rationed. Water was carried in steady rotation to prevent collapse at key posts. The Ottoman commanders increased focus on a single weakened sector, concentrating heavier pieces to deepen the fissure. A breach was no longer hypothetical, it was anticipated. Beyond the visible clash of artillery and stone, a quieter battle unfolded inside the fortress. Morale became as fragile as masonry. Rumours spread with the smoke, whispers of overwhelming numbers of failed relief attempts elsewhere along the frontier. Sleep grew scarce. Every distant explosion felt closer than the last. Yet discipline did not fracture. Watches rotated with mechanical precision. Orders repeated, confirmed, enforced. Civilians carried stones beside soldiers. Women transported water under fire. The distinction between fighter and inhabitant blurred under necessity. What the attackers measured in firepower, the defenders answered with cohesion. The garrison understood a simple equation. Panic would break the walls faster than cannon, and so resolve was guarded as fiercely as any breach. When the wall finally gave way, the breach formed a jagged opening into the courtyard. Ottoman infantry surged toward it, supported by archers and renewed artillery bursts. Defenders withdrew a short distance to improvised. Barricades built from timber and rubble. The battle compressed into confined space. Noise amplified, visibility reduced, coordination strained. In that narrow corridor, Bornemissa's remaining devices were released at close range, forcing attackers to regroup repeatedly. The assault did not succeed at once, nor did it end immediately. Waves pressed forward and fell back. Both sides recalculated. Then environmental conditions shifted. Smoke from artillery drifted back across the attackers' forward positions, obscuring visibility at a crucial moment. Defenders counterattacked into that confusion, pushing pikes into disordered ranks and reclaiming space within the breach. Momentum, briefly uncertain, tilted inward. After weeks of strain, the calculus shifted. The breach had not secured control, losses mounted, supply considerations weighed against prolonged exposure on hostile ground. The siege no longer promised quick resolution. Commanders assessed cost against objective and reconsidered continuation. Inside Eger, there was no certainty of relief, only awareness that survival depended on outlasting expectation. The walls were damaged, the defenders exhausted, but the line still held. The confrontation had narrowed from grand strategy to simple persistence. One side sought decisive conquest, the other sought time, and in that difference, the outcome began to shift. After weeks of bombardment, the Ottoman commanders made their decision. The guns were pulled back, the trenches fell silent. The army that had expected swift victory turned south. The fortress still stood. Fractured walls, burned timbers, exhausted faces along the battlements. No triumph, no celebration, only survival. In the short term, the mining towns remained secure, and Habsburg authority in northern Hungary held its ground. The campaign of 1552 did not break the frontier. In the long memory of the region, Eger became something larger than stone, a reference point for resistance in a divided kingdom. A reminder that scale does not guarantee outcome. One fortress, 2,000 defenders, against an empire. The walls were breached, the empire withdrew, and history took note.